All right, load the box, returning from hiatus as we took a week off to soak in the draft and all that it was. Will, I know you are dealing with some sickness tonight. Dustin, I know you are dealing with the moaning of the Lakers season
Yeah.
that was. But don't worry, Anthony Edwards has arrived for the T Wolves, and so at least you guys have that to look forward to. And the Pacers are still in the playoffs. They're like my local team, so
Yeah.
local. They're 2 hours away from me, but
Local.
look at me stouting probably the most exciting show in Load the Box history, talking about basketball because I'm really bad at doing this show. The Vikings have a new quarterback of the future. It is not Drake May. It's not Jaden Daniels. That was mine and Dustin's guy. It's not Spencer Rattler. It's not, it's not a Jaron Hall. It is a top 10 pick for the first time in franchise history. And then, of course, there were other draft picks made that we will talk about. But I think we got to kick off with that. Dustin, you are the guest. You pounded the table for Drake May. You said you loved him. You had the same feelings about him as you did for C.J. Stroud in last year's draft. It's been a week. We're recording this Thursday night after the draft, so it's been a week since the decision was made. Are you disappointed? Are you excited? Where are you feeling as Dustin Baker, the Vikings fan?
Not disappointed whatsoever. When New England went number 3 with May for those 20 minutes, I was like, oh, because the dream was dead. And then even though mock drafts in the final 72 hours started to suggest J.J. McCarthy would slide, I was in the believe it when I see it mode, and I was prepared to trade with the Chargers or have the Vikings trade with the Chargers, whatever the price was for J.J. McCarthy, and I would have supported that. So I was disappointed for a moment that our guy, Drake May, went off the board. And now I'm paranoid because he went to a shitty roster that he's going to look like ass and then we're going to look stupid. Selfishly paranoid about that. But no, I have no disappointment about J.J. McCarthy. I am elated that they got the youngest quarterback in the draft. You might recall last year I was all sour on the idea of Hendon Hooker because he was going to be 25. And by the time the Vikings even thought about needing him with Kirk, it was going to be 26 or 27. And it just makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit. And so Penix did that a little bit, although I do like Penix's game, the way he spends it. And I was kind of surprised to hear that the Vikings' alleged big board had he and McCarthy so close together. Like, oh, what are we doing? But no, I am more than excited about McCarthy. And I'll say this, probably every episode we do until September, the only thing that matters about Vikings football for the next 3 years is whether that guy is good. I have a personal litmus test, and it is that J.J. McCarthy has to be at least good as Dak Prescott. And the reason I say Dak Prescott is because in my mind, Prescott is one step above Kirk Cousins in terms of efficiency and reliability. And you want McCarthy to be better than Cousins because otherwise, why did we get rid of him? So I need J.J. McCarthy to be Dak Prescott or better. He probably won't be that good as fast as Prescott was good. But this situation, you've heard it ad nauseum, is so wonderful with the coaching staff and McCown and O'Connell. Then the offense, of course, and then the Flores defense, I know is going to improve. If this doesn't work for the rookie quarterback, I honestly don't know how the Vikings could do anything differently to set a guy up to succeed.
Yeah, it feels like a situation where if McCarthy fails, McCarthy was going to be a failure. It's not like the Vikings did a bad job. Will, I want to get your thoughts on your quarterback of the future, J.J. McCarthy, the Michigan man.
Yeah, first, just wanted to ask Dustin this kind of off his rant there. Do you see McCarthy starting week 1?
No. I would love to be blown away, and the guy looks like Jesus in the summer, and you have to start him. But this is the Vikings we're talking about, and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's comment after the draft that there are so many dirty hands in the NFL when a quarterback doesn't work out. That really leads me to believe that there is no reason to rush this thing. We even do this thing in the NFL sometimes where we make the guy sit for like a game or two. It's weird. Like, I know some of them happen with injury with Baker Mayfield or Justin Herbert, but it's like we just don't want to put him out there in week 1. I don't even think it will be that soon. I would bet a substantial amount of money. This is not with intel or sources or anything. This regime seems like a cautious one that will do everything by the book. And who really cares if we have to see Darnold for 2 to 7 weeks? I can already tell you, and I'll probably get into this theory later, that guy's going to be good, Sam Darnold. Not because I believe in him, but it will be the most Vikings thing imaginable that Darnold is too good for McCarthy to get on the field, and then we're going to have this fat-ass debate about whether or not, hey, we're 6-3. Should we switch to McCarthy? No, why would we switch from a good thing? Darnold's doing great. I almost guarantee you we're going to have that debate.
It would be like the Dolphins when they took Tua and Fitzpatrick. Kind of had that Dolphins team. I don't want to say rolling. It's not like they were 8-1 when they switched to Tua, but I think they were a game or two above 500, and then they switched to Tua, and there were immediate reports from the locker room that there were players that were like, "Hey, what are we doing here?" But I have seen somebody or some people say and make the debate, and I kind of agree with it. And I want to get both of your guys' takes on it. We'll start with you because I also want to get your just general takes on McCarthy as the new quarterback. But what do you think? What would you do? What would Will do if he was head coach of the Vikings for a day? If the competition was close, like it was closer than you would want to admit between Donald and McCarthy, would you default to Donald to protect McCarthy from any harm, or would you just be like, you know what, it looks close, let's go ahead, let's get the kid in there because the team's going to be basically the same, one way or the other?
I think honestly, the tipping point in that decision for me would be, how do I think the run game's going to be? Because if I think the run game is going to be more efficient than it's been the last 2 years, and if we think that Aaron Jones plus whatever they decide on the interior of the offensive line of, either the draft picks or the UDFAs that they got or any random additions here in the next couple of months, if they think that they will have a formidable run game, I'm giving the ball to JJ McCarthy. Because I think development will happen better when you are playing if you are in a good situation. So much of the good that Dustin's talking about with Dak Prescott, his initial entry into the league, he looked so good as a rookie because he had this ridiculous run game. And I don't think the Vikings are going to have, the 2017 Cowboys run game or anything like that. But I do think if that part of the offense can, buoy the pass game a little bit with a rookie quarterback who's going to have some growing pains, then you throw him out there, you let him learn. And he seems to have a staunch enough and resilient enough mind to withstand some failure and to withstand some of those growing pains. So that's what I would do. I think there's just a lot more to be gained from playing than from watching if it's close. So
this is the kind of second part, because I don't want to get away from this, because I do think this is important. So that way in 5 years when JJ McCarthy's out of the NFL bagging groceries, we can all laugh at our excitement that we had on this night. Scale of 1 to 10, how did you feel during the pick? You've obviously had a week to reflect. How are you feeling about it? Are you happy with the trade up? Are you disappointed that they moved up? Are you disappointed they didn't go up and get one of the top 3? What's Will feeling right now?
I felt a deep sense of calm. I think part of that came from that they didn't trade up so far. They didn't give up their other first round pick. Part of me had some trepidation that they were going to sell the farm to go up to 4 or go up to 5 to get JJ McCarthy, who has had varying, mixed reviews, right? A lot of people love him. Some people are a little more skittish on him. So I think I was a little concerned about just, giving everything up for that. So part of the calm and sort of the peace I had was from that. But also, as I started to think about all of this together and I started to put the pieces together of the whole situation and understanding the love that the Vikings have for JJ and the fit that seems to be between JJ and O'Connell, like you've talked about plenty of times, Dustin, how these two guys are so similar and they see the world in the same way, and you could just tell that it's obvious. JJ McCarthy wanted to be nowhere other than Minnesota. He wanted to be at TCO Performance Center this week. He wanted to be nowhere else. And so it seemed like a marriage that was already, from the start going to work. And the other thing that I think I'm excited for with this guy is the youth, like we've talked about. He's more moldable clay than you might get with Bo Nix or Michael Penix, or even Jaden Daniels, who's going to be 24 in the middle of this next season, which I don't think people ever have talked about that. Like, Jaden Daniels is kind of old too. Mm-hmm. But the other thing with him that I'm just excited for is he plays mistake-free football, and you put a mistake-free guy in the middle of a, somewhat loaded offense, things should go pretty well. So all that together, I like I like where the Vikings are with this. Do I think JJ McCarthy is going to be the next great Michigan quarterback, who wore number 12 for the Patriots for a while? No. But I think there's reason to be hopeful. More reason to be hopeful with this pick, with this current team, with this roster, this coaching staff, than we have been with any other Vikings quarterback selected, whether it was the first round or otherwise in the last decade or so.
Yeah, I wanna quickly jump in and just say, like, you say he plays mistake-free, and I think what's important to remember about McCarthy is he does play relatively mistake. I mean, obviously he's a quarterback who, he's gonna throw the occasional duck of bad ball, but he's 20 years old. He gets kind of a pass. He couldn't buy alcohol, and he was throwing interceptions in national championship games. Like, let's give the kid a little bit of a break. But I think that you look at what he did on third downs at Michigan, and he was so lethal on third downs, and he does push the ball over the middle of the field, and he does throw risky balls. I think mistake-free often gets confused with being a check down artist, and that was a criticism of Cousins. I feel like his first couple of years in Minnesota, he won't push the ball down the field, and he won't throw a 50-50 ball to Diggs or Thielen or Jefferson or whoever. And I think that was kind of true in the beginning of the Cousins era, and then Cousins got pretty aggressive towards the end, which is why I was kind of pounding the table that we re-signed him after the injury, and then he went and signed for a whole bunch of money, and that's a whole nother story. But I think that he's not just some check down artist who I'm going to take a shot here, and it's not just because he's now playing for Sean Payton, but I feel like Bo Nix's completion percentage was super inflated, right? That's a very poorly kept secret. He threw a lot of screens at Oregon, and he wasn't really the push the ball down the field, throw these over the middle passes like McCarthy was doing. And even though McCarthy had a limited sample size due to the offense that Harbaugh was running in Michigan and the running backs that he had and the success they had doing that, when he was given the chance to show his arm talent and to show his ability, I think he showed it at a high level, and that's one of the reasons that I personally was elated about the pick. I call it this is like a Skip Bayless take, if you will. I think that the fact that he lost in the semifinal last season, of 2 seasons ago, whatever you want to call it, and then came back, and obviously he didn't have a choice, he had to come back, but he came back and led that team, where it went, and won a national championship, a perfect season, all those things, beat Ohio State twice, which, that's a big deal. As someone who lives in Ohio, that is a big deal that he beat them twice. I like what the kid's made. I think he's made of the right stuff. I really do. He has I think he's already in communication with his teammates. No Celsius, just the vibe that I get from the guy and from his history at Michigan. I think he's already setting a tone and setting a standard for what he wants this team to be. And I think it will truly be his team by his second or third year in the franchise. I think that he's just that kind of a leader, and he's that kind of a personality. Dustin, the Vikings obviously traded up for that pick. They also traded up, and we'll get to Dallas Turner here in just a second. I want to know what you thought of the first trade up, moving up 1 pick. Sean Payton baited the Vikings into trading up, if you believe what he was saying, because we live fully in his head. What did you think of the trade up? Were you happy? Do you think the Vikings overpaid and didn't need to, or do you think they made the right call moving up to 10?
I'm going to answer that in just a second. I want to make it clear. I firmly predict that Darnold will start. If it was up to me, I would do exactly what Will would. I would let her rip, because I really don't care if the Vikings happen to go 3-14. They still have their first rounder next year. As a Vikings fan, we know all about 10-7 seasons, all about 7-10 seasons. If we needed to go 3-14 because the rookie quarterback was developing, I'd be totally okay with it. So if it was up to me, I would start the guy out of the gate. I mean, as long as he doesn't look like an abomination this summer.
Yeah.
On Sean Payton, if that's even true, his little shit-eating press conference thing, like, all you did was cost the Vikings an extra 5th rounder. Nobody cares, and you're the dipshit for not going to get McCarthy over Nix. So I don't quite understand why he thought that was a huge slam dunk. It would have been sweet if McCarthy just fell to 11 and everybody was hunky dory. But that bombshell of Penix to Atlanta, we're gonna be old men and gray hair in me and my beard, not on my head. We're gonna remember that moment as one of the most shocking draft things that there is. I try to stay off Twitter during the draft because somebody always spoils the pick. I don't know. There's always like 2 guys that tweet the pick, and then it's like. So I happened to be on Twitter at that moment, and I saw the OMGs. And I was like, well, what did they do? Because it didn't even cross my mind that they could have got a quarterback. And I have this like flaw that every day I think about the Falcons, like how they could have ruined this for the Vikings if they took JJ McCarthy. To effectuate their little plan, it would have been smart to take the youngest quarterback instead of the oldest one. Because by the time Penix is ready to rock and roll, he's going to be 26 or so if Cousins plays well for a couple years. So I firmly understand the trade up to 10 because anxiety set in, or absolute terror. Like, oh, shit, if the Falcons can take a quarterback, anybody can. You just gave $180 million to a guy with a bad Achilles and he's going to turn 36. They were like one of the ones that you could totally cross off the list at quarterback because they just got Kirk. So I actually commend them for jumping up to 10 and getting it done without any bullshit, like, somebody leapfrogging you. So I enjoyed that trade. And then the part about McCarthy not having to do too much at Michigan, like that's one of his knocks. This guy is a quarterback. He's going to love it that he gets to do more stuff at the NFL level. He wants to throw the ball. I'm sure it got on his nerves on Saturdays at sometimes when it's like, oh, I got to hand it off now. I got to hand it off again. I can guarantee you with his mentality, he's going to want to let it fly. And the Vikings just so happen to have an offense where, for better or worse, they throw a lot. So I think it's going to be a wonderful marriage of both worlds. And the final thing on McCarthy is I'm really glad that we don't have to worry about any like moodiness that Kyler Murray has or Caleb Williams seems like he might have. We got the happy-go-lucky guy who wore a smiley face shirt at the pro day. You got the guy who's probably going to overreact when he scores a touchdown. Like, you got a persona there that we don't have to be like, oh, is he going to be fully invested in this? You got the opposite. You got the guy who's just happy to be alive. So I am all in on McCarthy. I will always lament a little bit that they didn't get Drake May because I think May would have done spectacular in the Viking system. But what are you going to do?
Yeah, I have to disagree with you a little bit. I don't think McCarthy is coming in with the mentality of like, finally, I get to show the world this cannon on my arm. I truly look, it's a week after the draft. I've listened to every JJ McCarthy. Like, if he said it into a microphone, I've listened to it at this point, and I just want to like absorb the knowledge of my new quarterback. And I was the same way with Kirk Cousins when he came to Minnesota. It's the biggest position on the team. I really buy that he just wants to win games, and he doesn't care if he doesn't throw a single pass because we're playing, we're playing in Seattle and it's a rainstorm and it's just not the condition. He has none of that. I really don't think he has any of that. Like, let me be the reason we win. I think he just wants the team to win. And I don't know if that's a Harbaugh thing. I see it now. I'm forgetting things. I think he said it was Harbaugh told him that whenever he was a freshman or whenever he was a recruit. He was like, if you come to Michigan, don't expect to put up jaw-dropping stats because we want to win a championship. If you want to win a championship, come to Michigan. That's that was the promise, and that ended up coming to fruition, obviously. But I really think that he's. Go ahead.
One more thing that I'm really excited about, if we're going to fully embrace that we got the QB wins guy, is almost for my entire Vikings fandom, so 1996 and forward, almost every time the team goes to play Monday Night Football on the road, or they're going to a late afternoon game at the Chargers or something, I always expect the Vikings to lose. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. They just have this mentality. If it's prime time on the road, they're probably going to lose. If it's outdoors on grass, they're probably going to lose. If McCarthy can make me stop thinking that, this will be all worth it. The best teams in the league usually go about 500 on the road against winning teams, and the Vikings haven't done that in my lifetime or anything close to it. So what I want him to do in the next 1 to 12 years is I want it to be like, hey, it's Monday Night Football. The Vikings are going to Joe Burrow's Bengals. I want to be like, sweet, let's go. I'm usually like, oh, I can look at that and be like, there's an L. Like, just get it out of the way. You remember like the 2019 season when the Vikings won Sunday Night Football at the Cowboys? Kendricks had a big game. We were like, oh my God, that shouldn't have been a big deal. Like, they just got to win against the Cowboys. But it felt so different because they've always performed so poorly in these certain like niche spots. So if McCarthy can help reverse those internal vibes that I feel, man, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I'll never forget because I was on my honeymoon. Cousin's first Monday night win, and I got married. Was on the honeymoon, sitting in the hotel. We're not going out to dinner tonight. The Vikings on, and I'm sitting there in my Jim Klein salsa jersey, and like freshly married, and watching the Vikings. And Cousins went. I'll never forget. He got the first down that clinched the game. He went ballistic. It's the most emotion I think he ever showed on a football field. That's not a knock on him. Yes, it was against Chicago in Chicago. He went. I mean, he was fist pumping. He was screaming. It was like when Adrian Peterson trucked that Steelers guy and just went to the sideline and wah, like just screamed in pure football. It was that, but from Kirk Cousins. Will, I want to get your final thoughts on JJ McCarthy and the pick, and then we'll move on to Dallas Turner, who is not Will Anderson. I will call him Will Anderson at some point tonight during the show. I guarantee it.
Did they wear the same number at Alabama?
No, I don't think
so.
so.
They both 15, or was Will Anderson 51?
I don't remember what Will Anderson was, but I know they played together for one season, so I don't think they wore the same number.
Yeah, I mean, he was 31. Yeah, I mean, they look from, football helmet, side profile, they look the same. My only thought, and I think it's funny that we're talking about this QB wins thing, right? Because it's been the debate, right, with Kirk Cousins. It's this whole, like, well, he doesn't have all the playoff wins, and he only has the stats. And so now we're getting the guy that doesn't have the stats but has the wins. And I have always been sort of like wins are part of the story, but they're not the whole story if you're evaluating just a quarterback. Because obviously the quarterback affects winning more than any other position, but it's still a team game where there's 11 guys on the field at one time, and there's two sides of the ball, and there's special teams, and it's this whole it's the ultimate team game. So I'm definitely not like QB wins guy, but let me be clear about my football team. I don't care if my quarterback throws for 50 yards a game or 450 yards a game if they win. So if you're getting a guy in JJ McCarthy who is win above all else, I'm game. I think winning in college is one thing, winning in the NFL is another thing. So, just because Tim Tebow won in college, obviously that didn't really translate to the NFL. So it's not as if it's a 1-to-1 match, but having that trait, that quality of just a killer when it comes to winning, I think that is huge and a huge plus for the Vikings and who they got.
I should point out, whenever I brought up McCarthy, like, just wants to win, that was not me saying anything about, like, oh, he's just a winner. Like, I hate that phrasing. I hate that mentality, because that's Tim Tebow's the exact comp of, like, yeah, you can win a lot of games in college and not do anything in the NFL. Like that's a real possibility. I was just pointing out, and I think Kirk Cousins has the same mentality, where I don't think Kirk Cousins really cared how many passing yards he threw for in a game. I do think Kirk Cousins wanted to win football games. I'm not, that my knock on Cousins was he never won a state championship in high school, so the Vikings shouldn't sign him to this contract. And it's like, okay, why are we talking about 2006? Like, come on, like, let's be adults here. But yeah, man, McCarthy, it's an exciting new era in Minnesota. But also, I was a little surprised that the Vikings took Dallas Town on. I was shocked that they traded up because I was like, where are you getting these picks from? Like, it seems like, and it's true. I think we have like, what, three picks in next year's draft now because of the trades and things like that. And Kwesi said, there's ways to get those picks back, which I'm not going to doubt we can trade down in next year's draft. We'll see what happens. But I was shocked that they took a pass rusher just the way that the offseason went. Like, they got, Van Ginkel and Gunnard, and I thought, like, okay. And so they moved up. I really thought it was for Quinion Mitchell, and I was really excited that they were moving up to take Quinion Mitchell. And Latu was off the boat, and he was, like, my guy. So I was shocked when we took Dallas Tauno, but then once we took him, I was like, holy crap, we just took Dallas Tauno. So, fellas, pop the champagne. The Vikings first round, best first round we've had since we had 3 picks in 2015 or whenever it was. Dallas Town on our Viking. We'll start with Will. We'll go reverse order as we did last time. What did you think when they moved up? I know you texted me when Latu went off the boat and said no in all caps because you were already talking about how, oh my God, he's going to fall. He's going to fall straight to the Vikings. But we get the other guy, right? Like, those were the 2 guys in my mind that were competing for the number 1 spot. We get the other guy, in my opinion, who's still damn good. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, my other dream was to get 2 Byron Murphys on the team. I wanted them to draft Byron Murphy II out of Texas just for the sake of having a couple of Byron Murphys on defense, but that dream died when Seattle took him. I loved it. I think you can always say, like, defensive tackle might have been more of a position of need. It probably still is a position of need. You can never have too many good corners. I think we've known that. But I think with Kwesi's perspective of, if you can get this guy in the building who is this good, is spoken this highly of, comes from that program, all I got to do is move up 6 picks. And the Vikings have, they've struggled with defensive end or edge rusher depth ever since Everson Griffin left the team back in 2019. And I think getting sort of your next homegrown Danielle Hunter, I think, is huge. Shelf life of defensive players is not as long as we'd like to think. I mean, Bernard and Van Ginkel could be awesome this year, and they could fall off a cliff next year, and they're not even old. It's just like the nature of the beast. And so I loved it. Yeah, there's a lot of nuance and everything, but I think for what you gave up, you gave up a lot of picks, but they're 4th and 5th round picks. I don't really care. And you got a blue chip edge rusher. I don't have any issue with it.
Yeah, I was trying to cook up this analogy all week of, like, when Kwesi and Kevin took over the team, it was like they took over a building that had always been like a mechanic shop, and then now they were trying to turn it into a bakery. And, like, so the first couple of years they were, like, acquiring draft picks to, like, get bakery things, and then it was finally time to buy the oven, and this year was them buying the oven, and, like, quarterback, premier pass rusher. Not a lot of, no day 2 picks. Like, no depth guys. I mean, maybe some depth guys in the late draft. I think they did good with the UDFAs. I'm not knocking any of that. Like, Will Reichard might be Justin Tucker 2.0. Who knows? But, like, I think what they did in the first round was they spent a lot to get 2 players that could really be, like, face of the franchise, put their pictures on the hallways of US Bank as you're walking into the stadium. Like, I loved the trade up. I loved the aggressiveness of the draft pick. Both draft picks, really, because, I mean, they moved up 1 spot, and then they moved up, 4 or 5 or 6. Like, they moved up quite a few with the Jaguars. So I really liked the pick. I won't go, like, super in-depth. We talked about Dallas Towner a little bit in the pre-draft shows and things like that. We obviously talked a ton about J.J. McCarthy tonight. Dustin, I want to get your opinion. 1, Did you like the trade up? Would you have rather seen them stick at 23? Do you like the idea of just like 2 first rounders and then no middle, like no day 2 guy? Like what was your thoughts?
So after your bakery analogy, you come to the baker
Yes.
on the show. Yeah. Well, the first part is I spent so little time thinking about the Vikings option with the pick number 23 in the last, I guess, 6 weeks, that when we got there, my wife was sitting there. I was like, "Holy shit, we get to pick another guy!" And I seriously didn't like. And I write all day about the Vikings. I didn't really even consider like who could they get. So in those 20, 30, 40 minutes, it felt like, oh my God, they could get Quinion Mitchell, they could get this guy, they could get that guy. So my answer might surprise you a little bit. I am very pleased with how it ended up. I respect taking the shot, doing your Will Anderson impression from last year with that trade, and getting, the clone of Will Anderson and Dallas Turner. I'm glad they did it. I'm glad he's on the team. But if I was running the draft that night, I'm not doing revisionist history about like why'd he do that. If I was in charge that night, I would have just stuck at 23, and I would have taken probably Johnny Newton or Chop Robinson. When I was calling around, if the Jaguars said we need your 23rd overall pick, a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th, I would have told them to eat a dick. I'm not going to give you that. I could just get another great defensive player. So the trade, because the initial one with Houston cost 2 seconds, it ended up being for one single edge rusher, 2 seconds, a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th. And to me, that's really expensive. So the night of, if I was in charge, I would have sticked and picked or even traded back, knowing I could get Chop Robinson at about 28 or 29. Now, it sounds like I'm trying to have it both ways. No, I'm just telling you what I would have done. I am completely fine with Dallas Turner on this football team, and I absolutely agree with Will that this is the first time since Danielle Hunter was just starting to get good that we have edge rusher depth. Now, DJ Wanham was great against the Bears and was pretty damn good against everybody last year, but that was a brave new world in having edge rusher depth. Usually, you've got Everson Griffin, Danielle Hunter, sweet, or you've got Danielle and Zadarius Smith, and it's just on the billboard for edge rushers, you got 2 guys, and then you have reservist players who are very clearly reservists. This summer, we're going to have a real heated debate about, hey, should it be Dallas Turner right away, or should they just work him in? Because Andrew Van Ginkel, they have the options to do that. I love Turner's youth. He just turned 21, just like McCarthy. I think that he'll be able to stop the run once he acclimates to the NFL. I've seen the tape, and I think that's in there. A lot of pass rushers are one-trick ponies, like Yannick Ngakoue. Don't ask him to stop any running backs. He ain't doing it. I believe that Dallas Turner, if he doesn't have it already, can soon develop into that. And then I think I did my homework on this not long ago. Alabama players that are highly touted don't usually just bust. They aren't just usually garbage. Whether it's Devonta Smith, if they've got a fancy label on them and they're in the first round, they usually end up decent, if not really good. I'll end the Turner part of this mentioning when we thought it was somewhat realistic that Kirk Cousins was going to be extended, probably 2 years, maybe 3 for the pro Kirk crowd. On shows like this, they would say, what would you do with the 11th pick? And I'd say, if we're going defense, give me Dallas Turner. That was my answer. I kid you not. I can go find the footage. So when they figured out a way to do both, chiefly because McCarthy fell to 10, I was like, this is really sweet. So I really respect the resolve to say, you know what, we saved a little bit. We didn't have to trade up for Drake May, so let's spend a couple of those mid-rounders. There will be some compensatories, at least 1, hopefully 2, but I think it's only going to be 1. So that will flood into the draft piggy bank. And then 11 months from now, all 3 of us on this show are going to recommend and predict that Kwesi will trade down no matter where he is on the board, because he can flip that bitch at least once or twice, and he can get several draft picks back. Yeah. And it's almost a lock. I mean, I don't care if they're at number 2, if they have they're not going to need a quarterback. That pick, I would bet the farm will be traded at least once or twice, no matter where it is.
Yeah, the only way that I could see not trading it would be if, like, you have a Josh Rosen in Arizona, where you stout McCarthy, and he is terrible.
Shame on you.
Like, yeah, I know, shame on me. He would, like, if he was that bad, and you end up with a 1 or a 2 pick. And, like, Shadell Sanders has, a crazy year at Colorado, then it's like, okay, we'll take Shadow, we'll restart. You know, I get it. I would respect it. But I think, like you said, we're all going to trade down. Also, we still are owed potential compensation from the Atlanta Falcons for tampering with Kirk Cousins. And I wonder if that will come in the form of like hey, give him a 5th round pick, and that will be an extra draft pick.
Why do we think the Vikings are going to get rewarded? It's usually the other team gets penalized.
Because Kirk Cousins said in his introductory press conference, yeah, when I was meeting with the chef,
I know he did it,
trainer, and all this stuff, and so I think the Vikings can make a case as they are, with the happy with their new quarterback and their new youth infusion that they have. They can be like, that's why we didn't sign Cousins. It was because he met with the weight coach in Atlanta. That's why we didn't do. Give us a pick. Give us something for that. And, everyone thought it was going to be in this year's draft, but apparently it's going to be in next. So we'll have that compensation as well coming in.
That's so wishful thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a second-round pick.
As just so we're clear for the listeners who don't get Jordan's sarcasm here, the Vikings probably are not going to get any picks from Atlanta. Atlanta will likely be penalized something. But the Vikings probably won't get anything. What will probably happen is the Falcons' first, second, or third round pick will just be slashed. It will no longer exist. And then, everybody will move up one pick, basically. Yeah. So the Vikings are not going to probably win anything.
I will say that's not entirely sarcasm for me. There are reports from like Mike Florio and some.
There's hope.
There are some names.
It's small hope.
Most of them Vikings fans that are saying yeah, they could get a pick for this. So we'll see what happens. But really quickly, let me recap the rest of the draft. I have decided. I made this decision. This is one of the adult decisions I've made since becoming a father. I'm gonna stop getting invested in 6th round picks. It's not worth it. I pound the table. I say, this guy's going to be like a Hall of Famer. This guy's going to be so good. I'm so excited. And then they never do anything. Like Kyle Hinton, I thought he was the next. He was the next guy, and he's nothing. So I'm not going to get overly excited about any of these guys except for one. Kyrie Jackson with the 108, the defensive back out of Oregon. Walter Rouse out of Oklahoma, the tackle at 177. Will Riker, the kicker out of Alabama at 203. Michael Juggins, the offensive lineman out of Wake Forest at 230. And then 232, defensive lineman Levi Drake Rodriguez out of Texas A&M University-Commerce. We lost Dustin, I believe. I don't know if that was planned. Oh, here he comes back.
He's back.
Dustin. Do we have you? Okay. Oh, hello? We are muted, Dustin. I called you Justin. That's my cousin.
No, that was my fault. I was hitting on mute. I hit the wrong button. Continue.
But yeah, so that's the draft class. Let's really quickly, Dustin. I want to get your opinion, as I think you are like me, draft head, and you enjoy this process. Did any of these guys scream immediate, like, holy cow, they got this guy at this pick, or anything like that? Do you see any of these guys making any meaningful contribution at any point in their career beyond being like swing backup, besides the kicker?
I agree with you that it is silly to think of the best case scenario for every late rounder. But I will tell you, this week and like the next 3, these are the weeks for that. When you start to think of like, Levi Drake Rodriguez, he's Project X. Kyrie Jackson has a reasonable chance to creep up the Vikings depth chart because he's tall. And if you don't want Cortland Sutton and T. Higgins abusing you anymore, then get a tall cornerback. And he's feisty, cocky. So in a quarterback room that has, 6 startable, decent cornerbacks, I can see Kyrie Jackson emerging, maybe not week 1, but eventually, and being a guy. And then, of course, Will Reichard, the Vikings fans we're talking about here. We have a chance to get a kicker that's good, and so long as they don't throw in the towel after a horrendous game like Daniel Carlson, the guy can probably grow and develop into something awesome. So by default, Will Reichard will be part of the Vikings fabric for hopefully a really long as McCarthy's quarterback. And the other guys, as much as I would like to believe that Project X, Levi Drake Rodriguez, has an easy path to defensive tackle because they didn't sign anybody. Usually you just sound like a moron when you start doing that because those guys are practice squad. Walter Rouse's PFF numbers are incredible. I don't know why he fell to sixth round. Yeah, you can get in the weeds and get enthusiastic about all those guys, but tampering your enthusiasm is more realistic. But you'll see Reichard every Sunday, assuming he beats Parker Romo out of a job. And then Kyrie Jackson, fourth round is the cutoff between, could this guy play? Anything after the fourth round, you're like, yeah, probably not, unless his name's Stephon Diggs. But at fourth round and higher, there's a reasonable expectation that guy can morph into a starter.
I love it. Will, I know you are not a tape bono. You have 19 children in the Goodwin household, so I know you've got a lot, you don't have the time to put in. What's the best case scenario? I listed the players, I listed their positions. What do you think, like, the most realistic best case scenario? Obviously best case is they're all Hall of Famers, but, like, what do you expect optimistically out of the later round picks from this class?
I think excluding the kicker, because I think kickers getting drafted, period, is noteworthy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, the best kickers are getting drafted in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. I think Jake Moody might have got taken in the 4th round or something, and that was crazy. But so excluding Will Reichard, who I think we can all have at least some level of optimism because of what we saw him do at Alabama. For the most part, he was very good. It's funny, whenever I watched Alabama football, I'd always cheer against them because I was so tired of them winning. And I'd always get excited when Will Reichard would miss a kick. So now that's changing dramatically. I would say best case scenario, one of these guys makes an impact, semi-long term, couple, 3 years. Meaning he makes an impact for multiple years. I think the guy that I want to just highlight is Levi Drake Rodriguez, not necessarily because of the Prospect X thing and the whole whatever, but the Vikings seem to love him. And when Ryan Grigson was talking about, I think he had two guys they were interviewing about. I think it was Juergens, the offensive lineman from Wake Forest, and then Drake Rodriguez. They had like a 15-minute, Zoom interview with the local media. He just had nothing really interesting to say about Juergens, and he was an offensive lineman. Ryan Grigson was. So you would think, like, hey, let's geek out about the offensive lineman here. He spent about 9 minutes of that 13-minute Zoom interview talking about Levi Drake Rodriguez, and the amount of excitement with which he spoke was palpable. You could also hear, he's relaying information from the scout that spent the most time with him, and it was in his area of the country, etc. They seem to be over the moon about this guy, not because they think he's going to be Aaron Donald, but I think they love the makeup, they love the work ethic, they love the low risk upside. And I think he's someone to watch, someone to monitor. I think he's a crazy man. He's going to be out there before everybody else. I mean, he was talking when he went on his top 30 visit with the Vikings. He got so excited at the possibility of having his own code to get into the building so he could go work out whenever he wanted. This guy is going to be at the facility all the time. He's going to be getting better all the time. And I think that's something that they loved. So it's an interesting guy to focus on. Obviously he's got a cool story, and everything, but he went from an NAIA school to a Division II school, which eventually became an FCS school. So he's this guy who's played for no-name teams and got drafted, with one of the last few picks of the NFL draft. And so it's exciting, again, getting hope up for him being a big contributor is a little bit foolhardy, but then again, the Vikings have a need at the interior defensive line, which is where he plays. So who knows? He could see the field. He could be the next Ivan Pace. He could surprise some people, and and make his way to the 53.
Yeah, we don't have time to get into the UDFAs tonight. I know there are some exciting UDFAs. So Dustin, we will have to have you back on to talk about the UDFAs at some point. Hopefully in the near future. Our people will get with your people. Those people are ourselves. But I will just very quickly, and these will be my final thoughts, and then I'll pass it off to Dustin for his, and then Will, I'll let you take us home. I'm just gonna really quickly for my final thoughts. I'll do like a best case scenario for these late round picks, and that would be like Kyrie Jackson is a serviceable tall corner who you play against the aforementioned tall wide receivers. And maybe he does play some pretty decent press man, with help over the top. I don't think he turns into a shutdown guy. Walter Rouse, best case, I'm going to say would be like a like a swing tackle backup who can come in a pinch and potentially, hold the felt down for a few games while, one of the tackles had to miss. Lyko is Justin Tucker. And then Jogans, it's the same thing. Like, it's the swing backup type deal. And Levi Drake Rodriguez, I'm going to say like the best case scenario for him is he turns into like a Harrison Phillips, which is like a good defensive tackle. You don't want to build your defensive line around Harrison Phillips, but he's a good defensive tackle. Like he's a good D lineman, like that kind of a thing. And so that's kind of my best case scenario for all of them. I kind of sped through it there. I would love for all of these guys to succeed. I usually get really, really, really excited about the late round guys. I won't let myself do it anymore. I got my heart broken a few years ago by the defensive tackle from Pitt, and I can't remember his name, but like he got shot in the offseason. And then somebody.
Jalen Twyman.
Yes, Twyman. I specifically went on a different show and said, I guarantee you Jalen Twyman will be a starter for the Vikings in the next 2 seasons, and he will be like a top 12 defensive tackle in the league. Like, I was so high on him. Nope, nothing. So that's mine. This show has been a long one. We thank you for watching and appreciating it. We'll be back soon with more content. Really quickly, Shop Unified. Make sure you follow the show at LTB Vikings. Follow Dustin. Dustin, what's the Twitter handle?
Dust Baker.
Okay. At Dust Baker. Follow at Will Bad Lose and check out the Bad Loser blog. Check out Vikes now. Dustin, I'll pass it off to you for your final thoughts. Doesn't have to be about football. If you really want to talk about LeBron's legacy, go ahead. This is your chance. It can be about whatever you want it to be.
No, I'm going to stick to football. I want some of the viewers, although LeBron is my guy, to start thinking about a couple free agents. Curiously, the Vikings have a WR3 need, still have a defensive tackle need, arguably have a left guard need. At wide receiver, the WR3, it's the best spot possible to have a roster need because there's like 10 guys that the Vikings could go sign after breakfast tomorrow and upgrade. Whether that's Hunter Renfrow, Allen Robinson, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. There are a lot of guys there. I think Hunter Renfrow would make sense. That's a recommendation. At left guard, there's this guy who the Packers drafted like 10 years ago named Greg Van Roten, who recently played for the Raiders, and he's a guard. He played like over 1,000 snaps last year. He's got like a 76 PFF grade. Nobody talks about him. He would be a sweet guy at guard. And then defensive tackle, Calais Campbell. That's what we're down to. If we want the Vikings to have not just a body at Jonathan Bullard's stop, it would be Calais Campbell, who is absolutely ageless, who's never slows down. I just don't know if he'll want to come play for a team that doesn't have Super Bowl stakes. So those are my free agent recommendations, because the Vikings still have about $17 million in cap space and these low-key roster needs.
Absolutely beautiful. Will, take us home.
Yeah, my final thought, just a little teaser for our UDFA breakdown either next week or whenever we get to it. Some folks are saying that the Vikings won the UDFA market again this
every year.
Last year they won it with Ivan Pace, and it was in a landslide. This year they signed Gabriel Murphy, edge rusher out of UCLA. Everyone was kind of freaking out that he fell off the board, and some were grading him in the 4th round, somewhere in there, and the Vikings snagged him after the draft is over. So exciting stuff. We'll talk more next week. That's all we got. I'm going to go take some medicine, and we will talk next week. Skol, y'all.